911. What's the emergency?
I was in bed and I heard gunshots that went boom, 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 and they were shooting really fast.
All right, we'll send a deputy out to check the area.
I see these two unmarked police cars, and then I see an ambulance, and I start running up that road. The detective said, well, we had a shooting tonight. And he said, it's my duty to inform you that your daughter's deceased.
On a hot summer night in 2012, Wendy's daughter, Jamie, was found shot to death in her car. In the months leading up to her murder, law enforcement had sent Jamie on nearly 20 undercover operations, but she wasn't a detective. She was what the street would refer to as a snitch. Law enforcement calls them confidential informants, or CIs, and they are essential to gaining access to criminal networks.
They're invaluable.
But it is often ordinary, untrained civilians who are asked to do this very dangerous work.
I was standing about here. They started pointing the gun at me, telling me to get on the ground.
They're pimping out college kids to do the dirty work that they don't want to do.
They're outside with the bulletproof and guns. They send me that I don't even know how to hold the gun.
What kinds of people become confidential informants, and how are they protected?
My parents didn't know. I didn't feel safe.
Tonight, we'll explore the stories of 3 people sent into the lion's den by law enforcement. A struggling mother of 2.
I told her, you're just a pawn in their game.
A naive college student.
Every second I felt in over my head.
And hardworking immigrants chasing the American dream.
After all of that work, what did you get for it?
Yeah.
America. It can be inspiring and beautiful. It can also be dark and ugly. It's so many things, but it's ours. It's our America. Crystal River, Florida, a sleepy tourist town known as one of the best places to swim with manatees. In early 2012, it was the site of a series of sting operations in which 18 people were arrested for drug distribution. This couldn't have been achieved without the help of someone on the inside, a confidential informant named Jamie Seeger. 6 months later, Jamie, a young mother of 2, was gunned down in the middle of the night. I've come here to try to unravel the details of Jamie's violent death, and I begin with her mother, Wendy.
Her car was like right in here, just down from the hill.
So your feeling is that she may have been shot up this incline a little bit and the car drifted down to here?
The pictures I seen of her, she slumped over the console in the center of the car, so I imagine her foot came off the brake and the car just rolled.
What's it like to come back out here?
I'm half expecting, to see her or to hear her, because this was the last place she was alive.
After Jamie's murder, her family requested information about her informant work they believe led to her death. But the sheriff has refused to release this information.
It's been over a year since Jamie was killed, but there's still so many unanswered questions. Has that affected your grieving process?
It's just a lot more I have to accomplish before I can even think about grieving, because I'm afraid that when I do start, it's gonna tear me apart.
So she was born in 1985.
Yep. She was 27 years, 6 months. She liked to help people. It was one of her passions.
When Jamie was 20, she got a degree in corrections and began working as a prison guard.
It was one of the things that she wanted to accomplish in life. She wanted to continue so she could go into the police academy.
But in 2006, a serious car accident derailed Jamie's career path. Suffering from a severe back injury, her doctor prescribed pain medication.
She got addicted to the pain medication like so many people do. I would say probably about 2009, 2010, when it started to become a real noticeable problem.
Jamie quit her job at the prison, and her life started to unravel.
Her and her husband had split up because of her addiction. He just didn't want it around the kids.
One day, Jamie came to her mother with a startling solution for her addiction to painkillers.
She said, I'm not on the blues anymore. I'm like, oh, great, wonderful. How'd you do that? Oh, well, such and such person told me if I smoke crack. And I'm like, what? I'm like, that's not a fix. That's just going into something worse. And she says, I think I can regulate it so I don't get addicted to it. And I said, you're chasing a fool's dream.
How bad did it get, her addiction to crack?
It was really bad. I mean, she lost all body weight, body fat. I mean, she was a skeleton with just skin.
Jamie would often disappear for days into the streets and drug culture of Crystal River. And during this time, Jamie began working for the local sheriff's department as a confidential informant, setting up the same dealers that she bought drugs from. The question was why?
So Jamie told you that she wanted to become a CI because she wanted to help law enforcement.
Right. She worked a lot for him, and she got paid for every job that she did.
So do you think that Jamie was working as a CI to support her crack habit?
Well, it made it easier for her to get because that's what she was buying.
There are many reasons people choose to become a CI. Some do it in exchange for leniency on criminal charges, some do it for the money, and others do it out of a sense of civic duty. The answer to why Jamie became a CI lies in her confidential informant file that the state hasn't released.
Did you have concerns while she was doing this?
Yeah. I says, they're gonna figure out, you know, sooner or later. And, you know, the police aren't gonna be there. They're not gonna have your back. You're just a pawn in their game.
Several times a week, Jamie was sent out to make controlled buys, drug deals she recorded for the police with a hidden camera. Jamie did at least 18 sting operations in a 3 to 4 month period. In this small town, it probably wasn't difficult to figure out who the informant was.
Thanks so much for talking to us.
Yeah, no problem.
One of Jamie's contacts from the streets agreed to speak with us on the condition that we don't reveal his identity.
What can you tell us about Jamie?
She was a good person. I never had no bad run-ins with her.
So did people start talking about the fact that Jamie was a snitch?
Oh, yeah, I mean, the rumor started because there was a bunch of buzz last year when you heard people talking about it and saying that she was working for the police, and then which in return caused, you know, problems.
When people started to talk about her, were you afraid that something bad could happen to her?
Yeah, anytime there's somebody's name getting thrown around like that is a possibility of harm.
Right.
You're not dealing with good people.
As the rumors on the street spread, Jamie started to receive death threats from some of the dealers that she set up.
You know, she tried to play it off every time somebody would say, well, we know you're working for the cops. She would just sort of laugh and says, no, that's not me.
In the days leading up to her death, you said that Jamie was expressing concern to law enforcement about her security?
Yes, she called them.
What did she say?
She said, I've had some people text me saying that, you know, they're gonna take care of me because they know I'm the CI.
How many times had Jamie contacted law enforcement to express her concerns?
Quite frequently. I spoke with them also, you know, about her addiction. I said, we're trying to get her help, but we don't have the resources needed to be able to get her into a rehab facility.
Do you think law enforcement sufficiently protected Jamie?
They did the opposite. They put her in harm's way. They were the harm.
Every informant's worst fear is to have their cover blown. Jamie was a struggling addict, and her life was now in danger. For a young man in Virginia, the perilous journey of being a confidential informant was only just beginning.
I was standing about here, and 3 agents ran up the steps.
On July 25th, 2012, Jamie spent the day at Wendy's house desperately calling around for some crack cocaine to feed her addiction. Late in the evening, she finally found some. Normally, Jamie went on these runs alone, but because she'd been receiving death threats, she was scared and asked Wendy to ride along with her.
We were supposed to be going to a gas station. So I said, I'll go in and get a pop. So it wasn't like I was gonna be there when she did the buy.
On their way to the gas station, the dealer called to change the meeting location.
They said, I'll be walking down Creed and you can pick me up. She says, well, I got my mama with me. He says, don't bring your mom.
Jamie dropped Wendy off at the gas station.
And I told her, I love you, be careful.
After 20 minutes, Jamie still hadn't returned, and Wendy tried to reach her, but she didn't answer.
So I'm sitting there on the cement by the payphone, and I see these 2 unmarked police cars. And then I see an ambulance, and I'm like, wow, there must be something big going on down that street. I finally walk over, and I shone that flashlight up on the road sign, and it said Creed. That's when I realized that that's the road that she went down, that all them cop cars were going up, and that ambulance was going up. And so I start running up that road.
As Wendy was running up the road, she was stopped by a sheriff's deputy.
He said, well, we had a shooting tonight. And as soon as he said that, my ears started going numb. And he says, it's my duty to inform you that your daughter is deceased. And I just put my head in my hands. And I said, I need to see her. But they refused. I didn't get to see her at all.
Wendy, what's the next step for you? Like, what do you want to know?
I want to know exactly what went down, what happened, why it happened, and who all was involved.
The work of informants is often shrouded in secrecy, and the answers to Wendy's questions may not be easy to come by. It's estimated that up to 80% of all drug cases in the United States involve the use of an informant. They can be hard users like Jamie, or recreational users like the young man I'm about to meet in rural Virginia. History runs deep in these rolling hills where gentlemen's farms and quaint B&Bs dot the landscape. 25-year-old Alex grew up in this world of privilege with all the opportunities it afforded.
I've lived here my entire life on this farm.
Growing up in this really bucolic environment, would you say you were a good kid?
I played sports, I got good grades, I excelled in a lot of areas, but I'd say I played a balance of golden boy and mischievous bad boy.
Like many young people, Alex had a chance to test his independence when he went off to college at James Madison University.
So you get to college, and what happens?
My freshman year, my grades were good, but my behavior was wild.
Alex quickly fell into a hard partying crowd.
James Madison was a big party school. You could walk into a suite in my freshman dorm and ask people what they were on, and there might be 6 or 7 different drugs. Mushrooms and acid and ketamine and cocaine and weed. You want to make friends and you want to be liked, and when there's such a rampant drug culture and seemingly no one getting in trouble, it's easy to fall into a situation where you're one of the cool guys. When you're young, people put themselves in harm's way just to feel alive, and I think that I very much did that once I went to college.
Throughout his college years, Alex was able to maintain his grades and still party. He's taking me to the suburban off-campus house where he used to live during his senior year of college.
This is my house.
It was here that he hosted some of his wildest parties.
It's a nice house for a bunch of college kids.
Yeah, it definitely was. After a few years of living in rinky-dink little apartments, it got a lot better from here.
So you had a pretty good life.
Yeah, I had a great life.
On the morning of one of his last final exams, Alex's high life came to an abrupt end when the local drug task force raided his house.
I heard someone walk in the door and yell, "Police." I was standing about here, and 3 agents ran up the steps, and they all had guns, some sort of semi-automatic pistols. When they saw me, they started pointing the gun at me, telling me to get on the ground, so I got on my hands and knees and crawled into my room.
According to Alex, a special agent followed him into his room and locked the door. He told him that an informant had tipped them off.
He told me that it's alleged that you're a drug dealer. We've come in here looking for drugs. We know that you've been buying and selling them and gave our informant prices.
The police found 7 capsules and 1/3 of a gram of the party drug Molly valued at $200. Alex was facing a felony distribution charge, which could mean 40 years in prison.
I was in here asking about an attorney and being told that that's not how this works, and that if I got an attorney, my next conversation would be on a jail phone with my parents begging for bond money, and that I would likely be expelled from school. I was told if you want to continue school, you're going to have to play ball.
The agent gave him an ultimatum: become an informant for the drug task force or get arrested and go to jail. In colleges across the country, students are often used to infiltrate the campus drug culture.
You don't really think about how vulnerable college kids are to becoming informants.
At that point, I'm about to graduate from college. The world was my oyster. I was invincible. And when someone's explaining to you that you could lose 5 to 40 years of your life, it's a powerful tool.
Alex was desperate to make it disappear, but he would soon discover that becoming an informant was not going to be an easy way out.
I was in situations that I never wanted to be in, trying to make friends with people I never wanted to meet.
Yeah, we're here to pick up the two. What's up?
In a dingy motel room in Queens, New York, a drug deal is going down.
It's right there. All right.
But none of the men in this room are actual drug dealers.
All right, good.
This is a role play, part of a training for law enforcement personnel on how to use informants.
Come on back in, let's go over what we did.
Brian Salee is a narcotics officer with over 20 years of experience. Through this on-site training, he hopes to prepare officers for scenarios they may encounter in the field. I hope to leave here with a better understanding of why law enforcement needs informants.
Informants are the bread and butter of law enforcement. They really can provide a lot of good information and assistance. In small towns where everybody knows everybody, there's no way to bring in an undercover detective. You have to use informants.
Okay, on this one, we're gonna do where you're briefing your informant.
We're gonna do this in, out, quickly, buy the drugs, take the drugs back to the house. You understand?
Yeah.
Are confidential informants trained in any way?
They're taught, if this happens, this is how you can react.
How important is keeping CIs safe?
It's paramount. If informants are being hurt, people aren't gonna work for us.
If you had a kid who got in trouble with the law and had an opportunity to work off some charges by becoming a CI, would you advise that he or she do it?
That's a tough question. I'm lucky my kids all grew up and I didn't have to have that situation. I can see the benefit with some people. It gives them a chance to keep their record clean. I wouldn't recommend it as a profession, so that's a tough one.
While Brian and his trainees are working out hypothetical situations, Alex was facing a very real one.
You want to take a left here?
A few days after the police raided his house, they summoned him to a secret location. He calls it the Snitch's Lair.
I met the investigator, and he led me down this lane. I had no idea where I was going or what I was doing. I think this might be it, the one straight up to the left. That's it.
It's here in this nondescript office at a storage facility that the investigator laid out the terms of becoming a confidential informant.
He gave me a deadline. You have 1 year. If you make enough bus, we're going to drop the charges.
Enticed by the potential clean slate, Alex agreed to become an informant. But he quickly found out that it wasn't exactly what he expected. Alex says the investigator told him they wanted him to go after crystal meth, heroin, and crack cocaine dealers. We contacted the investigator. He wouldn't comment on Alex's case, but he did confirm that the policy at the time was to use CIs to go after hard drugs.
And I said, well, what do you expect from me? I don't do those drugs. And he said, do what you've got to do to make some new friends and find some bad guys for us, and we'll make this all go away.
The more Alex heard, the more uncomfortable he became.
I was asking him, how can you ensure that that person's not going to know it was me? How can you protect me afterward? And there weren't very good answers. I didn't want to do this. I didn't feel safe. My parents didn't know.
At first, Alex tried to stall the investigator, but the pressure quickly intensified.
I might get a text, hey, are we going to get serious about that thing, or should I send a unit to you right now to bring you in and get these charges started?
Alex realized he was going to have to do something more substantial.
I was in situations where I was in a house that I never wanted to be in. I was trying to make friends with people I never wanted to meet, all for self-preservation. The first time that I tried heroin was related to me trying to make friends with someone in that game and figure out how to set that person up. I had to do that heroin so that the guy would trust me. I puked. It made me sick. I was sick anyway, just because of the situation.
Alex was a kid from a sheltered background who had dabbled in party drugs. Now he was trying the highly addictive drug heroin in order to fulfill his agreement with law enforcement. Feeling trapped, Alex started to consider other ways to escape the situation.
I didn't have enough money to run away. I was in such a bad way that at times I thought about just killing myself so that I'd never have to bear the shame.
Before Alex could pursue a plan B, his informant deal was revoked and he was arrested. Informants are often vulnerable people who agree to do this dangerous work because they believe they have no other option. In upstate New York, I'm about to meet two immigrants in pursuit of the American dream who were also lured into the shadowy world. Emilio and his sister Analia start the day early to open up their cafe. It's almost Christmas, and it should be a happy time for Emilio. But instead, he feels the pressure of a ticking clock.
You always nervous. You don't know if they willing to give me one more year or they want to get rid of me.
Emilio immigrated to the US from Argentina. In a few weeks, he'll learn if he's going to be sent back to a country he hasn't lived in for 16 years. Emilio has a young daughter and a wife who is also an immigrant.
All my life is here. Everything I have. My daughter, she born here. I'm the only one to provide for my wife and for my daughter. If I'm gone, what are they gonna do?
This is a common dilemma for many immigrants, but Emilio is different. For more than 4 years, he worked for the United States government as an informant and was promised permanent residency in exchange.
They promised to give me something they don't give me.
Emilio's story begins in the late 1990s when he and his sister Analia came to the United States on tourist visas. They fell in love with the country and wanted to stay.
Here, if you really work hard, you get what you work for.
Emilio and Analia hired an attorney to help them file the proper paperwork for permanent legal residency.
You thought you were doing everything right.
Yeah, we are in the waiting process.
While they waited for their paperwork to be approved, Emilio and Analia continued to work and eventually saved up enough money to open their own cafe.
When you come to another country, you are more like competitive. You gotta work better than everyone else.
They were achieving the American dream. But in 2005, they found out that their paperwork was never filed and that they faced potential deportation.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Friends at the local police department introduced them to agents from the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, also called ICE. The agents told them if they became informants, they would help them get S visas, which are given to immigrants who help law enforcement. They were scared, but they believed it was their only option.
So how often were you working for them?
They call maybe once a week.
ICE wanted them to go after a wide range of criminal activities, from drug dealers and gangs to prostitution rings and human smuggling operations.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So they're sending two people who have had no criminal background, just upstanding, hardworking people out into some of the highest crime neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They're outside with the bulletproof and guns. They send me that I don't even know how to hold the gun.
Emilio tells me that the scariest operation was when he was sent to one of the most dangerous cities in New York State to buy a fake green card.
They told me, you gotta go buy paper for this lady. That's it. And I asked him, yeah, but I gotta know who sent me here. And they say, okay, tell them they send you this guy. So I went to this place, and this lady come out and she say, okay, who sent you? And I say, yeah, this guy sent me. Oh, okay. But it's not here. We gotta go in my car somewhere else. You can't say, no, I don't go. I'm stay here or I'm going home. So then you look suspicious.
Emilio got in the car. He was wearing a wire, and undercover ICE agents were monitoring the operation. He assumed they would follow him to the next location.
They lost me because the range of the microphone, they lost me. I went one way and then they don't even know.
After a few hours of waiting, Emilio became concerned that his cover was blown and he fled.
It's like you walking like this, go walking with the microphone. And I was, guys, where are you guys? And I was alone. And then you're shaking all over. You can't stop thinking what happened.
After working with ICE for 4 years on increasingly dangerous operations, Emilio and Analia weren't any closer to receiving their promised S visas. In fact, ICE was about to up the stakes.
They come out, well, now we need a terrorism. You have to get some terrorist information. I say, well,
I didn't get
I say,
it.
well, I don't know. Start walking, go walk, take a day
Go to New York City,
Yeah, go
they
to New
say.
York City, start walking.
They told you that you had to move to New York City so you could work on terrorism cases?
Yeah.
You gotta do it, they say, if you want this.
Yeah, if you want this, you're gonna find the information.
Emilio and Analia didn't know where to begin to find terrorists, and they were scared to even try. But ICE threatened to deport them if they didn't deliver on this request.
I say, why do you do this to me? I did my part. I did what they told me to do.
Back in Florida, Jamie did what she was told, and it resulted in a devastating outcome.
All rise, please, now in session.
5 months after Jamie's murder, 3 suspects were arrested.
Judge, in conversations with defense counsel.
Pete Magrino is the prosecutor on the murder case, and he's going for the death penalty. He explains that the men on trial may have had a simple motive: revenge.
Miss Seeger had been a working confidential informant for the Citrus County Sheriff's Office.
2 of Jamie's alleged killers had also been targets in her informant work. Several months before her murder, they were charged with felony distribution of crack cocaine and released on bail. In Florida and many other states, defendants have the right to see all of the evidence against them. It's part of a pre-trial preparation phase called the discovery process. In cases involving an informant, this can expose them to even greater risk.
We have to disclose the information that we have to make a case. The drug buys that Miss Seeger made were audio and video recorded, and those materials get disclosed.
So it's altogether possible that the defendants were able to either hear or see interactions with the deceased.
Correct. And ultimately, in retribution, she was murdered.
It doesn't sound like she was very protected. I mean, after she did her work in the field, it doesn't sound like she was very protected.
The sheriff's office notified Miss Seeger when that information would be disclosed, but I don't think one can have a valid security concern for their safety if they're going out to buy drugs for their own consumption.
Jamie was putting herself in harm's way by continuing to buy drugs from the people she had busted, even after her identity was revealed. But at that point in her life, was she capable of making good decisions on her own behalf?
How vulnerable was Jamie during all of this? I mean, she was a crack addict. How dangerous do you believe it was for law enforcement to continuously send her into the lion's den, if you will?
They didn't think about that. They didn't see that she needed help.
Do you remember the moment when Jamie found out that her name was going to be disclosed?
They told her it's part of the discovery process. If the lawyers for the defendants ask for the video or audio, we have to supply it for them. And I looked at her, I'm like, that's the same as you walking in front of that person's face saying, hi, I'm the one that got you busted.
These are some of Jamie's informant videos that were released in the discovery process.
Get out of my food. So the guy he was, that been sitting down the road from the park. Did they? Yesterday, in a blue car.
Thank you. You guys gave me $40 to go make it by across from the high school. And where's Caddy at? He knows me, Jamie. Yeah. Told you I'll be back. I'm 60.
Who are you with?
I'm by myself.
Hey, be careful, girl.
I am.
You let somebody know if the police pull your ass over, all right?
I will.
These videos clearly revealed Jamie's identity to the men she helped bust. The sheriff's department must have known that this was a possibility. Did they really do enough to protect her? It's been over a year since Jamie's death, and many questions still haunt Wendy. She's enlisted the help of attorney Bill Grant in her fight for answers.
Jamie Seeger went out and did work with the sheriff's department, and because of that, today she's dead. And somebody's responsible, not just those that murdered her, but those that put her in peril.
Do you think Jamie knew the consequences of what she was doing?
The consequence, the result in death, I don't know that anybody knows that. Who knows that is the professional law enforcement person. That's why they're charged with the obligation and responsibility to A, make sure she knows, and B, to provide the requisite care after the transactions are over.
What do you want?
Complete unfettered access to her confidential informant file. We want the record so that we can know Jamie's activities and what she did for them, how she did it.
So have you been able to determine why Jamie became a CI in the first place? She apparently told her mother that she wanted to put away bad guys and help people.
Well, I mean, there may have been an element that she was a corrections officer, but at the end of the day, there were other things that she was facing. You don't just walk in the sheriff's department and say, I want to be a CI. And all those details lie within that file the sheriff's department will not release.
So what should the sheriff's department have done to protect Jamie?
When Jamie called and said that she was afraid for her life, they're threatening me, they want to hurt me, nobody ever did anything affirmatively. The government could have paid those people a visit. And it's shameful. The family has a dead daughter, survived by 2 children, and the sheriff of Citrus County has never even called or said, I'm sorry for your loss. Jamie served us well, and I'm really sorry.
We contacted the sheriff's department, but they declined to comment due to the ongoing murder trial.
There are CIs around this state that are getting harmed every year. These are real people with real lives who help law enforcement to help themselves and then fall into harm's way. They're not disposable.
Alex had survived his informant experience, but he now faced the legal system. After his arrest, Alex was released on bail. For over a year, he had kept this enormous secret from his family, and it was time to tell them.
I was finally stepping into the situation that I was so afraid and so mortified of, telling my dad.
I felt bad for him because that must have been torture for him, you know, to have to keep all this stuff bottled up inside of him. If you close the gate behind me, I'll scoot on in. I just wish I had been a little more approachable. The last thing he was probably going to do was call me up and say, you know, hey, Dad, I screwed up.
Alex's mother reacted with disbelief.
It just didn't seem like it was real. And then I started getting angry. I kept saying, I want to meet the man who's the head of this drug task force. You know, I'm your mother. I should have that right. You know, this isn't okay. They're pimping out college kids to do the dirty work that they don't want to do.
Alex's family hired a lawyer to fight the charges, but in the end, he was told there was no way to avoid jail time.
Nothing could really save me from the situation I'd put myself in.
Nothing in Alex's background prepared him for jail, surrounded by hardened criminals.
I was real scared in the beginning. I felt bullied because I guess I didn't look like the typical inmate. It was so obvious that I had never been to jail before.
Visiting her son in jail was not something Alex's mother thought she would ever have to do.
Going to see him the first time in the jail was an incredible experience. There's my son in an orange jumpsuit and plastic shoes and handcuffs. And the handcuffs, I'm thinking, handcuffs?
After 6 months, Alex was released on probation. While prison is behind him, he will have to carry the label of felon for the rest of his life.
Do you think what happened to you was fair?
I think that I was worthy of a second chance, of not being permanently imprinted as a convicted felon. You know, the best thing I had going for me, I'd never been in trouble. Good kid, clean record, made a dumb mistake. I'm not a good kid anymore. I don't have a clean record anymore.
Despite his jail time and felony status, Alex could be considered lucky. The worst was over, and he was now able to move on with his life. In upstate New York, Emilio and Analia were still at the mercy of their immigration handlers. After more than 4 years of working as informants, they were facing an agonizing choice: either risk their lives and their families to find terrorists for ICE, or refuse to do the operation and get deported. They were desperate and decided to discuss their situation with an influential customer of their cafe, U.S. Congressman Maurice Hinchey.
So we told him the case. He said, oh, it can't be. My country doesn't do this. I say, yeah, but they do.
He said, go to my office this coming week, and we're gonna help you.
Congressman Hinchey's office contacted ICE about the case, but instead of resolving the situation, it appeared to accelerate it. An ICE officer told Emilio that his handler was irate.
She said, somebody started to investigate in Washington what happened with you, and she's furious. You better call her. And I was so nervous. I started calling her, and she didn't answer. She didn't answer.
The answer came a week later, early one wintry morning in 2009. Emilio was getting ready for work when ICE raided his home.
Guys started to show up with guns, with long guns. All over the place, they started to show up, more cars.
All over the place, ICE.
And they put me in the car and they took me away.
Emilio was taken to a detention center. It's still unclear why Analia was not also detained.
What I suffered in that jail, you have no idea. When you not belong there, it's bad, very bad.
Emilio had never been in trouble with the law, and here he was in a maximum security prison facing deportation.
And that moment, you just say, send me whatever you want to send me, but take me out of here. Send me to the desert, but get me out of here. It's very bad.
Good, how are you?
How you doing?
Back in upstate New York, the community rallied, and hundreds of people called Congressman Hinchey's office, begging him to help Emilio. Congressman Hinchey did intervene and was able to get a stay of deportation. After 15 days in detention, Emilio was finally released. Emilio was ultimately granted a 1-year stay of removal, and each year he has to fight to get it renewed. The congressman and his community continue to support him.
We're going to continue to do everything that we can to try to make this
Thank you very
situation
much.
straight.
While Emilio is grateful for this temporary fix, there are no guarantees, and deportation still looms. It's been 4 years since his detention, and Emilio still lives in limbo. Every February, he finds out if he can stay in the country. As the holidays approach, his anxiety ratchets up.
Yeah, I think we want to take this. Sure? Yeah. I try to be happy for my daughter. Don't show it to her what I'm feeling inside, because you always nervous.
Analia is now married to an American citizen, and her path to permanent residency is much more secure than her brother's. But Emilio hasn't given up hope.
Given everything that you've been through, why do you want to stay in America?
I'm still thinking this is a country of opportunity. And I still believe in the country. We're gonna ask Santa if Papi can stay in the country.
What do you have to lose here if things don't work out?
My life, I lose. Everything I have. My wife, my daughter. If I lose completely.
After losing years of his life, Alex is trying to reclaim his promising future. He's living in a small one-room cabin, a far cry from the large house he lived in during college.
I'm very much laying low until I get off of my probation.
Alex was a journalism major, and he's eagerly pursuing his career.
This is Alex Sharp with the Rappahannock News. I'm actually writing a story about the deer hunting season. I want to be an investigative journalist, and maybe people will see my experience as an added perspective that could be advantageous. Someone who's been on the inside, I think that the felony has given me something to prove.
Even with the limitations on his life, Alex feels freer than he has in years.
I'm still alive. I don't have to hide anything anymore. I'm very much a master of my own destiny again.
Back in Florida, Jamie's legacy is now in her mother's hands.
Hey, who's that?
Mama.
And Wendy is trying to make sure that her memory lives on. Jamie's daughter is now 5, and she's very curious about her mother.
Here's your mama when she was 12.
Out of concern for her privacy, the family has requested that we not show her face.
I make sure we talk about Jamie all the time. We say that she's our angel now and that she's watching over us.
There's the
Yeah, that's your mommy.
I like this one.
Oh, you know that pink stuffed animal that your mom gave you?
I named it Mommy Angel.
Mommy Angel.
Wendy is also struggling to reclaim her daughter's good name, something that was lost when she became informant 12006.
It's okay. It's to your mama, so write whatever you want. I'm Jamie's voice now. I'm the only voice that she has. And I want people to know that she was a person and she meant something. She's always gonna mean something. To me. Oh, here.
No.
Every day, ordinary citizens are enlisted as confidential informants. We only hear about their risky work when something goes horribly wrong.
There it goes. I'll be dang.
Oh, wow.
While it can be argued that informants are a critical part of law enforcement, perhaps we should be asking ourselves, at what cost?
Here you go, Jamie.
Mama's a star.